Hey everyone, Matt here on the Vinyl Head UK channel, and it's about time that we went with another vinyl appreciation video for all of you guys. So I've got a record by one of the greatest, biggest metal bands, you could say metal gods, there's a big clue, that we've ever seen in the music world. But it's a record that kind of sits under the radar a little bit. When you think of this band, you'll think of certain albums: British Steel, Screaming for Vengeance, Painkiller. But you won't often think of this record. But it's one I saw in the record store. I picked it up because obviously I want to grow my collection. I'd love to have all of the back catalogue of this band. They're a band that are from a city that I grew up very close to, the home of heavy metal, which is of course Birmingham. That band of course is Judas Priest. Ram It Down. As I say, it's an album, it's a record that does not get spoken about all that much. It's not their best. It's not their worst. But definitely one that, you don't really hear much said about. But as I say, I picked it up. I'd love to have the full discography, the full back catalogue from Priest. It will take a bit of time because there are a lot of Priest records. Not just the Rob Halford eras, but, our other eras that we have to think about as well. I want to pick them all up. But we've got there. So I've got Sin After Sin, and now Ram It Down. So I'm only 2 in, but, it's a start. So, this was the 11th studio album by Judas Priest. It was released in May of 1988. This is a 2017 European reissue. It's 180 gram as well. Nice big chunky heavy record there. And it was put out initially by Columbia Records. It features that classic lineup: Rob Halford on vocals, Glenn Tipton and KK Downing on guitar, Ian Hill on bass, and then Dave Holland on drums, which this was the last record that Dave Holland featured on. He went on the following tour, the world tour, promoting this record, but it was his last one to be featured on that tour, and obviously this record as well. So a little background info on it. Initially, Priest wanted to do a double album. One side that was kind of sort of more commercial hard rock sound. The other side, a more sort of heavy riff driven classic Priest sound. The label did not like this idea. They didn't want to do it. So we ended up with 2 separate Priest albums. We had Turbo a couple years before, and then we had Ram It Down. Now, we all know about Turbo. They went off the rails a little bit on Turbo. Lots of synths, very much that commercial sound, that they were kind of going for on that split record, the double record. And yeah, it's one that people love to hate. It's got, Turbo Lover, which I think is a great track. It's one that I like hearing live when I see Priest live. But after that, it's not the best. Ram It Down, I think, was the side, shall we say, that was going to be more Priest sort of classic sound orientated. The riffs for solos. And I think that is quite clear when you start listening to this record, especially with the title track opening the record. We'll come on to that though, of course. We will come on to that. Let's have a look at the artwork as we always do. It's pretty simple. It's a big fist on quite a muscular arm smashing down onto Earth maybe, or a planet. It's pretty simple. There's not much to it really. Ram it down, and then that classic Judas Priest logo right there. And if you thought that was kind of simple and basic, look at the back. There's nothing. It's blue with our red track listing, side A, side B, and produced by Tom Allen. And that is pretty much it. There's nothing much I can say about that. Very basic. Having a look inside. So we have pretty much the same, minus Judas Priest and Ram It Down there. And then on the flip, we have our lyrics. That's about it. Again, I haven't really much to talk about on this one because there's not much to talk about. We have, of course, got who's who in the band, our production notes as normal. And then, interestingly, I'm going to hold it a little bit closer for you guys to see. I don't know if it will come through very well. We're looking down here. It's actually a list of all the solos in each song. So if you want to know who played a particular solo, there's all your info. Of course, we can get that now on the internet, but I imagine back in 1988, that information wasn't quite as accessible. So there it is. But yeah, there's nothing much I can say about that really, because there's nothing much to talk about. It's quite basic. Of course, if you follow the channel, you know I like to divulge a little bit on the artwork. I do like a good bit of artwork on a record, but I wouldn't say that's the best. It's probably not the worst. 180 grams, as I say, is this. Side A is just the album artwork once again. Nothing much else on it. And then side B, we have Judas Priest, Ram It Down, and then our track listing. Again, all fairly basic. Nothing much going on there. Just coming back onto the producers. So Tom Allen produced or co-produced this record. I think Halford, Tipton and Downing were also co-producers on this. He was a long-time producer for Priest. He'd done the previous 6-7 albums. And this was actually his last album producing Priest until 2018 when Firepower came out, which is a great album, might I add. But yeah, there was quite a lengthy gap. That was the first studio album back anyway, Firepower. He did a couple of live albums just preceding Firepower. So he did do some work with Priest again. But yeah, first studio album was not until 2018. So quite a significant break between studio albums going from 88 to 2018. What can I say? As mentioned earlier, it's not the worst Priest album. It's not the best. And it is a kind of, I guess, how to word this. I guess back in 88, if you were a diehard Priest fan and you had listened to Priest's records up until Turbo and then you heard Turbo, you were probably thinking, what on earth is this? With all its synths and its kind of radio rock commerciality. So when you put on Ram It Down and you're greeted with the the title track, and you hear Halford's high scream starting it, followed by riffs into a solo before we get the song really going, you probably did go, thank God. We're back to Priest sounding like Priest. Don't get me wrong, there are synths on this record, but it's definitely nowhere near Turbo. It is a more classic Priest sound. And considering the album that followed this was Painkiller, you definitely can hear a early sort of birth of the Painkiller sound. You can hear ideas formulating that probably be weaker tracks to feature on the Painkiller album. Painkiller is my personal favourite Priest record. I don't think, for me, there is a better Priest album than that. You probably argue that. Stuff like Screaming for Vengeance, British Steel, I'm sure people will comment and say, what are you talking about, Matt? Painkiller isn't the best. I love Painkiller. It was my first introduction to hearing Priest, as far as I can remember anyway. I think I've been asked this question a couple of times by people. If aliens came down to Earth and they came up to me and said, what is heavy metal? Firstly, I'll probably be confused as to why they've come all the way to Earth to want to hear about heavy metal. I'd be pretty happy with that, though, that we're not under attack. They just want to listen to some good music. And I would say, alien friends, this is the definitive heavy metal track. And I would put on Painkiller, the track. Because I think Painkiller is everything that is probably, I guess, stereotypical with metal. The drums, thunderous drums, the vocals, Rob Halford's just high-pitched classic metal sound. The solos, the just whole structure of the song, I think that is definitive metal. Yes, metal is vast. There is so much to heavy metal, but for me, that is heavy metal. I'd probably put on some Sabbath after that, but I'd start with Painkiller. I think that's definitive for me. And just going off on a tangent as well, I'm just going to throw this in. Rob Halford is one of those vocalists, to me, which he has not got worse with age, okay? We know there are vocalists out there that were once fantastic and are not quite where they were now. That's just a fact of life with some people. Rob Halford isn't one of those. Rob Halford's vocal, if you go and see Priest live, or you go on YouTube and you watch some footage of Priest live, his vocals are still phenomenal. There's not many guys out there who I think, who have been doing it as long, that have still got that vocal just ferocity and power and just sound just as good. Steven Tyler from Aerosmith is another one I'd throw into that category. But we digress. Let's look at track listing for Ram It Down. Something I haven't covered yet. So, side A, Ram It Down, heavy metal. Of course we get a Priest album with the title Heavy Metal. That is Priest to a T. Love Zone, maybe that could fall into Turbo. Come and Get It, Hard as Iron. Onto side B, Blood Red Skies, I'm a Rocker, Johnny Be Good, Love You to Death, and Monsters of Rock. Pretty much most of those are track titles that you would fully expect from Judas Priest. So with this, it's a tale of two sides, I think. Side A is the strong side, side B not so much. There's okay tracks on B, maybe one good one, but I think side A is the side that I definitely like most. As I say, Ram It Down, we open with that high-pitched scream of Rob Halford. We go into solos, we go into riffs. We're chugging along. We're back as Judas Priest. We're back as Judas Priest sound. Let's go. We're into the record. Fantastic. Love Zone. Skipping on to the third track. Now, if you have heard the sort of, I guess it was a side project by Rob Halford. It was a band called Fight, who were about in the 90s, who produced some good material, actually. They had Satchel from Steel Panther as guitarists. And now I know Steel Panther are very much a parody band, but they are very, very good musicians. And Satchel is a phenomenal guitarist. He actually featured in Fight kind of before he was known, definitely way before Steel Panther. But Love Zone, if you've not heard Fight, listen to Love Zone. And I think that's probably as close to a Fight sound that Priest did, especially with Rob's vocals. Yeah, I listened to it and I heard Fight more than Priest on that one, which is kind of interesting. Hard as Iron, so the 5th track. This, for me, is probably the closest sort of to hearing that early Painkiller sound. I think this, Hard as Iron, if you put it onto Painkiller, it would fit. It would be a weaker track on Painkiller, but it would fit. It is that sort of, you can hear what's gonna proceed. You can hear what's coming with Painkiller on this track. And there is a couple of instances as well where you can hear that. But this is a track for me that you can definitely hear what is the early rumblings of Painkiller, the album. Going on to side B, as I say, I think side B is not as strong. We open with Blood Red Skies, which is quite the epic. It's about 8 minutes. Acoustic with Halford doing his thing over the top. We go into a heavier riff bass sound. The Synths come back in. They make an appearance. We didn't lose them all together from Turbo. Here they are. The Synths are back. More kind of tastefully done, maybe, shall we say, than some of the stuff off Turbo. But they are there. It's a long track. It's a lot to get through. I'm a Rocker. Johnny Be Good. Johnny Be Good was the first single. Very random. They wrote it for a film called Johnny Be Good. It is the lyrics of the original. Chuck Berry. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it doesn't sound really anything like the original other than the lyrics. I'm not a fan of this track. If I'm honest, I don't massively like it. It was the lead single, as I say, for the album. But it is then randomly plonked in at track 8 on the record, which is odd. You'd think a lead single would be, you know, 2nd, 3rd. On the track listing, this is down in slot number 8. And yeah, I'm just not a fan. It sounds very different to the rest of the record. It's very obviously a commercial sound. And I just don't think it fits. And I'm not overly keen listening to it. It's not for me, I guess. Love You to Death. And then Monsters of Rock. Monsters of Rock is very ploddy. I think it's purposefully ploddy. But you kind of want it to get going a little bit. Never really does. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't find side B as kind of good as side A. But each to their own, I guess. But as I say, it's not the worst Priest album. And I'm glad I've got it. You know, I'd love, as I say, to get all their records. It will take time, and it will take money, of course. But I'd like to get there, which will mean lots of videos on Judas Priest, which is not a bad thing. If you're into your metal, Judas Priest is not a bad thing. The 11th studio album, The Big Fist, Ram It Down, smashing that world. Go and check it out. If you're a Priest fan, I think you'll dig it. If you're a metal fan, you know, I think see it like this. Don't see it as a Priest record. See it as a metal record. Because I think you'll enjoy it if you think of it like that. If you think of it as a Priest record, I think you're always going to be comparing it to what came before it. And obviously, again, what came after it with Painkiller. Even up to these modern records, you know, like we talked about earlier, Firepower. It's better than Nostradamus. I'll give it that. The 11th studio album, Ram It Down, Judas Priest. I'm Matt. This is the Vinyl Head UK channel. Thank you again for everyone that has subscribed, especially those that have done it in the last week or so. I've had a good few new subscribers, which are very, very welcome. Thank you for checking out the channel and subscribing. Hit that like button. Hit the bell for all notifications, all the usual stuff. Go and buy vinyl. Go and listen to vinyl. See you soon.